Muffin is going to do Sorrow Bash. He is going to use bashes.
A minute away from his PB with everything goes. Wow! Oh my god! Is that faster?
Is that faster? Big jerk sometimes. He doesn't want to play nice. Oh my good lord!
What a save!
Oh!
He makes it! Wow.
Oh my god! Nice!
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Ori and the Blind Forest All Skills Tournament. We are here with the final match from our round of 16. It's going to be the number 6 seed LurkingAssassin and the number 11 seed LusTher going against one another, the winner to face Elo Jiminy in the quarterfinals. Here to bring you this match, my name is Vol'jin. I'm here with Shafe. Shafe, we've got a pretty interesting matchup here today.
Yeah, if this race had happened at the beginning of qualifiers, I think we'd be looking at a much different race on paper. But LusTher just PB'd again this morning with a 29.49, so he has been putting in the work. He has continued to improve, as you can see there on the screen, the qualifier times. Not all that much separating them. Both runners are going to be using the same input method, slightly different route, 5 HP. And Lurking, meanwhile, has been putting a lot of work into Final Fantasy X, so the difference not only in terms of the practice that the runners have been putting in, but just overall LusTher's continued improvement since this tournament even started.
Yeah, and you can see there's slight differences in their PB and qualifier time. Of course, when your PBs are that good, that 1 minute does tend to mean quite a lot, but Lurking is kind of going to have to work off of his ingrained muscle memory. He hasn't PB'd since his grind for the 28 in December, which he did achieve, and then he's kind of been fixated on other games a little bit. Final Fantasy X has come up. I've also seen him doing Mega Man Battle Network 6 attempts recently, so he's got a lot of projects on the side that are not Ori and the Blind Forest, which I feel is a pretty common problem as you get deeper into one of these tournaments. So we'll see if that proves a problem for him. But yeah, for LusTher, he is really hitting his stride. He's got that 29 now, that sub 30 milestone, which is so important for so many runners, and becoming one of just under 20 people in the world to achieve that mark. It's very impressive.
Yeah, indeed. Although it is important to note, LusTher will be doing a lot of his normal tournaments route and placing safeties and all that kind of thing. So you do expect a little bit of a higher time for him than what he did this morning for his PB, but nonetheless, this is going to be a lot closer than it appears on paper. So getting started, getting the prologues get done, and the runners will be holding left for the majority of the first opening minutes here.
And as they go, we can think about all the things that might possibly befall one or both of them. There's always problems that can occur with these difficult routes that you do, and you need to get a very good time. Lurking, for his part, will be doing the magnetless Frankie walk. That is always rather terrifying. On LusTher's side, don't know if we are going to see, think at the other end of the game, don't know if we're going to see something like the warmth skip trick at the very end that requires you to do blind movement in the escape. But
yeah,
he does do that in his PBs.
Yeah, he does go for it in his PBs, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him go for it here, just on the basis of the practice that he's put in. He probably does feel a little bit more comfortable with it than he would have at the beginning of the tournament. And he has, I believe, done it in his round of 32 as well. Not 100% certain on that, though.
We did see Lurking overstep the sign pickup just a little bit. Have to turn around a little bit. So maybe, not entirely sharp. I think when he said he hasn't played Ori since the last tournament race, I think he meant quite literally, as in he might not even have done any warm-up today. It's hard to know. I guess we'll see here. Yeah, he misses that little 2-frame jump there. That is, it's not easy necessarily, but Lurking, maybe if he were on top of his game, would have gotten that. But we'll see how that goes. So far, both of their starts look quite good, and no major mistakes or anything, certainly. But as you go through this wall jump segments, the little things like that, just flubbing, grabbing that rock, that tend to show how you're kind of feeling, what your mental state is.
Yeah, but by the same token, I mean, not to use the overused phrase of it's like riding a bike, but if you play hockey, you play guitar, or anything like that, you take a couple months off, you get back on your skates and at the rink, it comes back pretty quick, that muscle memory, that ingrained practice that you have put in. It looks like LusTher's going to be going for the extra early HP here, which he had noted to us that he will be doing, so no surprise there. But yeah, like it does come back to you fairly quickly, so we might see a bit of some spaghetti, so to speak, from Lurking here in the early game of the first race, but I would expect at the very least by game 2 he's going to be a lot sharper than what might appear so right now.
Yeah, that's got to be the thing that LusTher is fearing too, is if your opponent's rusty, maybe you can take a little advantage of that. Lurking does get the early accidental level up there, just kind of miscounted his XP. That's not the worst thing in the world. You can certainly fix that. And he doesn't really need a lot of XP since he's not doing slime genocide. But again, just indicative of that thing we're talking about. And LusTher will sort of be kind of hoping for things like that to happen so that he can take advantage. But for now, that real difference at the moment is just the health cell and a little bit of small bits of spaghetti that LusTher had. Lurking's going to lose a little bit of this time back on the way out, trying to fix his XP here.
Yeah, worth noting as well, because of the lack of practice that Lurking has put in, he did note to us at the start, obviously being aware of the work that LusTher's put in, the fact that he's PB'd this morning, he is feeling a little bit trepidatious about this match in general, feeling that LusTher's going to actually have to make some mistakes in order for it to be, give Lurking a chance to win. So you harkened back to the mindset aspect of it. Maybe that's already sort of in his mind with some of these small errors. He's probably not expecting LusTher to make those mistakes, like bonking on the rock to pull to get that early keystone. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not this smooths out for Lurking as we head off towards Dash.
Yeah, coming through the elbow here, Lurking making some clean movement. LusTher making some clean movement there, as Lurking already navigated that area pretty well. So both runners, not, again, you can make a lot of mistakes early on and not have them end your run. And something that really separates the runners who are able to win in situations like this from the runners who don't is that when little things like that happen, when you accidentally flub up the jump to the energy cell, as LusTher did, you just immediately recover. You don't let that throw off your mental state. You just do the thing that fixes it as quickly as possible and just move on with your life. And so far, both runners have been displaying that pretty well. Lurking having to deal with that early level up, and as it's going into Blackroot Burrows, of course, we'll be making sure to pick up that 100 XP for his reload route. Well, we'll see if it's a reload route, actually. He might try for the optimal laser cycle. No, he's just going to go for the reload, looks like. And LusTher, for his part, will be doing some slime killing, collect his XP on the way through here.
Yeah, clean falls from both runners throughout the platforms and clean jumps across these vertical light beams. So far, no real, even minor mistakes in Blackroot from either runner. Just LusTher now on the right-hand side of your screen, waiting for the orb to respawn. Took a little bit of time there, and now he's going to hit the lanterns. Lurking on the left side is jumping up through these lasers, going through them consecutively, real tight. He does take a little pause there. Places the safety save as well, as he jumps up and is going to be looking to nail these platform cycles. LusTher now on the right-hand side, cleanly through the lasers as well. So probably the most dangerous part of Blackroot Burrows, now complete for both runners.
Yeah, it looks like Lurking might have lost a platform cycle, given this time difference that just got made up. Didn't quite see exactly what his movement was going on that caused this, but not a huge deal. It's about 8 seconds. But LusTher doing that genocide cycle, it's a lot easier to make that first cycle of the platforms, whereas for Lurking, he would have wanted to do a save and reload. And in Blackroot Burrows, that actually causes the platforms specifically to reset back to their last position. But in this case, he did not do that. He just used it as a safety save. So looks like a little bit of time loss for him, but just really an opportunity for LusTher to get a little bit closer right now, where that early fourth health difference normally would just make this early game be separated by that 8 seconds or so. And you do see that Lurking's XP looks quite good. And LusTher is going to also show up here with, that looked like 30 to level, so LusTher is also good for the Genocide route. And Lurking doing that cutscene, not doing that cutscene stack. He learned.
Yeah, just going for the regular skip. Going to be a little bit safer here. I would expect that's because of his rust. He doesn't want to add elements to the race that are going to increase opportunities for mistakes. So he's got dash. It's the zoom ability of the game, and we'll be zipping off to the left for probably the most difficult trick of the early game for newer runners. This is going to be the Frankie walk. It's relatively easy to execute with Magnet, but it's hard to execute very well, particularly at that last stage of it. So jumping up, getting the shot here in order to bait the Frankie out, taking another couple shots in order to lower it down to the health, and it stops. It just stalls there for no particular reason. Sometimes the Frankie likes to do that. And LusTher gets through cleanly with his jump there. So pretty much tied now as we head off towards the first sequence break of the game.
Lurking having good position on his Frankie there, leaving just enough HP to throw one more shot in. LusTher's position looks good too. It looks like they're both going to get the optimal setup. For Lurking, it just means one less jump, but he still has to wait for the Frankie to get close enough to get that magnetless grab of that XP, and he does. And LusTher right behind him, also getting his. So they're both into the Death Gauntlet, and they're very, very close to one another now. Lurking taking advantage of having Quick Flame, and LusTher not having Quick Flame, and wanting to be a little bit safe, not taking that Death Glide off of that Rising Crusher block. So that's going to cost him just about a second under over Lurking, but otherwise, good execution going through Death Gauntlet. Here's the key moment, as we'll see whether one or both runners will get the Grotto Cycle.
Yeah, this could be an 8-second differential on the Crusher Cycle here. Lurking left side of your screen, gets it nice and clean. Not even all that close. And LusTher misses it, bonks into the energy cell there. So that is +8 for LusTher on the right-hand side. So early, probably the, other than Frankie Walk, that's the earliest opportunity for a big differential between the runners. So Lurking now going to be heading off towards the double jump tree. We will expect to quote-unquote see blind movement from him. And LusTher, easy ghost over for him on the right-hand side.
Nice little optimal execution of that wall jump to get down around. There's spike protrusions there, and LusTher's going to pick up double jump, reload his file, do the same blind movement that Lurking just did. Lurking did it so well that he actually almost bonked on the spikes there, but manages to avoid taking any unnecessary damage. You do pick up the regroup ability when you do the double jump skill tree to skip that cutscene, and that does give you back 1 health each time you make a save point. So you'll see the runners throw down a number of saves along the way here. Here comes Grotto skip for Lurking. Skips out on the 15 XP because it would give him a 1-second animation at the top here, and he gets it second try, so not too bad, but a little bit of an opportunity for LusTher to make up just a small amount of time here if he's able to pull it off first try, which he does. Very nice.
Yeah, talking about that regroup ability, LusTher actually had to use it because his movement was very similar to Lurking's coming out from double jump with that blind movement, and he did take the hit on the spikes. So at that keystone door, he did drop himself an extra save. So just kind of worth noting there. Nice skip there on the cutscene from Lurking, and looks like LusTher has some clean movement coming up from Grotto here. One of the things that is programmed into this game, if you're unfamiliar, is that the collision on these walls looks exactly as it appears. So these walls look smooth, and they are smooth, so it's very easy for the walls to basically eat your jumps. And looks like both runners got out through the difficult part here of Grotto reasonably well.
Yeah, the one hiccup for LusTher there, missing the rekindle cutscene skip on that first Gumo pulling the rock, and there's a little flub there. So just a little bit of time loss here for LusTher, allowing Lurking to widen this gap just a little bit and give himself some room for comfort going into the Ginso tree. Now, there's still, of course, a lot of scary stuff coming up. Lurking does miss some of the Iceless Frog XP, and he is take this ability cell. That is very interesting. So that looks like he's not going to be doing crazy juggle in this race, because you would not need to take that ability cell if you were going to do it. But he does still get this optimal spinner cycle here. LusTher, for his part, is going to also be going up to collect that same ability cell. So we're going to be seeing Terror Break from both of them, even though we might have expected to see crazy juggle for Lurking.
Yeah, and I think that just goes back to what we've alluded to before with Lurking's rustiness and his focus on other games at the moment. Crazy Juggle is an exceptionally precise set of inputs for a prolonged period of time. Maybe not feeling comfortable just with the way his early game went. Maybe we'll see it in the second match. But for now, we've got a 12:07 entry for the Ginzo tree on Lurking's side. And LusTher not too far behind him either. We'll see exactly what his time is. Lurking's making clean work of the early portion of Ginzo so far. And trying to go for the telehops, looks like, and kind of busted the first attempt. Second attempt, much cleaner. That will give LusTher a little bit of an opportunity to catch up, though. And about a 12:32 entry.
Yeah, and something that'll give Lurking a little bit of an opportunity to maybe continue increasing that gap is he picked up Spark Flame, I believe, with the extra ability point that he had. It's not exactly what I would have expected him to do. That's really fascinating and is going to make his mini-boss substantially quicker. Apparently, this is something that we've seen before. I personally haven't seen it before, but like in the tournament, apparently he's not the first person to do that. But it's very interesting, and so you're gonna see here as we go to the mini boss. Look at those big old Spirit Flame bursts. Look at all that damage that Lurking just did to that one phase. He doesn't quite pull off the 2 cycle, but a clean 3, and that's just a nice little time save. That like I don't think it makes up for the amount of time he spent getting the ability cell, but it sure is nice to have.
Yeah, for sure. Although that does bring up the issue that LusTher's max capability here on the mini boss is going to be a 4 cycle. It's probably going to end up being 5. There's the first one, and spots out the second spawn and the third spawn very cleanly for the 3rd cycle. He might get 4 here. This is going to be close, and just shy. Oh, okay, so he will get the extra cycle there.
Yeah, his second set of volleys, he missed the very first pair of shots on that, so it was already over pretty quickly, but it's very, very hard to tell as a spectator.
Alright, so I'm going to be moving up now towards the Ginzo teleporter in our Keystone Dupe, because we do not finish the Ginzo escape, therefore don't have clean water to collect the Keystones that we would have in an old route. So LusTher looks like... No, he's fine. He's fine. And here's the setup. He does take the higher platform, does Lurking on the left-hand side, jumping off the spikes. Nice clean movement up through here. It seems to me that Lurking's got a little bit of more confidence in his movement.
Yeah, just as you said earlier with the comments about, you know, when you put your skates back on for the first time in a long time, it's still kind of like, you know, it's just a thing that you're comfortable doing. That muscle memory is still there. It hasn't gone anywhere. And it looks to be working pretty okay for Lurking right now. A week's not that long of a time as well. So Lurking able to get on top of his game. A little bit of a flub here on redirecting that shot. And he goes ahead and double bashes off the last shot to make sure he collects that XP from the mini-boss. But no real problem there. He'll be able to teleport on to Moon Grotto. Will get him access to the lower entry of Swamp, which he will, the upper entry of Swamp, which he will use to perform our Swamp entry trick in just a little bit here. LusTher performing his hyperspeed to come into that same mini boss. Looked like his HP wasn't quite what he wanted it to be, and so he had to take an extra hit there to take the death. But he did get the hyperspeed and will be wrapping up the mini boss in just a bit. Looks to be on the order of 20-ish, 25 seconds-ish behind. Alright, coming in for Swamp entry here, Lurking. Always, you know, there's always a scary trick. Lurking's going to make sure to position this frog as optimally as he can without accidentally throwing him into the water. Turns out amphibians can't swim in this game. He does get the first shot in pretty well, and then the second shot breaks the ceiling, does not phase through, as we hate to see. So Lurking is into Swamp. LusTher coming in now with his blind movement to do the same.
It looks like Lurking's got the hyperspeed here as well. And he does. Very nice. Coming up to the Stomp ability here, which a little bit of an issue trying to get that bash off of the first shot from the Mortar Shark. and he's going to just sit up there on top of that beam as opposed to doing the double bash. Flies around the spikes and gets stomped, and that is activated for him at speed 47, so we'll get an updated differential for you once LusTher makes it, who looks to have his hyperspeed set up on the right-hand side of your screen. See if he gets that. Yes. And now he's traversing the beams upwards himself.
That hyperspeed actually only saves around like half a second or 1 second as well if executed properly. Slipping off that beam, so maybe having a little bit of a tough time, and a quick high five with Lurking on the way out. And now he's able to reach the tree. Does look to be widening just a little bit. I believe that's just over 30 seconds now between the two of them. And Lurking is, going to be looking at this late game and saying that this is kind of where I need to, create some distance. But in LusTher's PB, his late game was incredibly strong. So I would not be surprised to see him keep up pretty well with Lurking here. And it might take things like that, accidentally missing a Kuro cutscene skip on the left side from Lurking, to help LusTher, kind of get that opportunity, and then his play may take over after that point. Lurking does get it on the retry, so he does save back some of the time, but overall, that's a pretty significant loss.
Yeah, that's normally a 17-second time save if you get it first try. Much more marginal if you get it on the second try, and obviously would lose time off of the third. Will he go for the double bash cutscene skip? Yep, he's trying to get... No, okay, bonks off the spikes and gives us some frustrated mouse movement to indicate that he knows what happened there. And LusTher did get the cutscene skip for his first attempt there. So we do have a 34-second differential between the runners as of when they touch Stomp, and it is much closer now as a result of the cutscene shenanigans there. So this is Charge Flame. You're supposed to get it much earlier. Who cares? You get it later because it's faster. And now setting up the save anywhere for the cutscene skip on the Grove teleporter.
I'm still laughing about Spark Flame shape. I can't believe he did that. Oh my goodness. A nice dash glide over the Spirit Tree, Spirit Well. Everything's a spirit in this game, and leveling up the ability to skip that cutscene and move on. But LusTher right behind, coming into the Charge Flame Tree, and now heading out with his save anywhere. So some very good execution by LusTher along the way here, and a few flubs by Lurking, just not as many flubs by LusTher to allow him to catch up here. And again, this late game in Ori and the Blind Forest, the margins are razor tight. Lurking is currently on 3 HP, and he's not getting any more for quite a while until well after the danger has passed. So this is really the opportunity where LusTher could have, some bad thing happen to Lurking and is, be able to take advantage of that. That's one bad thing. Missing another double bash. Those double bashes are a little finicky. You don't necessarily want to see someone die to something like that, but that's exactly the type of thing that does kill you in Ori and the Blind Forest quite often. We're going to head up now for some fast Stompless Shift.
Yeah, particularly with double bashing, it's a 1-frame window that you have in order to be able to get it. We do allow you to use mouse wheel in order to try and make that a little bit easier. Both of these runners are on KBM, but it still sometimes will just drop for no particular reason. First try fast Stompless for Lurking, and LusTher, he does not get the ability to sell there, so he's going to have to go for a backup. I was going to mention that he had caught up 18 seconds as a result of that Kuro cutscene skip that Lurking had failed on his first attempt, which had left them at a 16-second separation, but this is going to change things.
So Lurking is going to be able to go directly into his Sarabash, rocket jumping from the bottom of Valley to pick up some energy from the left side. LusTher is going to have to go down and to the right and pick up an ability cell here in order to be able to Terror Break. Lurking's Sarabash, very, very clean and quick, and he's on. I do think he burned an energy there, but I think he's okay, and it might at worst cost him a Ghost Door, but not much else. LusTher has recovered. Lurking is going to be beginning Crazy Juggle now, and this is a very precise sequence of charge dashes at this enemy above him. Keep your right eye on LusTher because he is working on his Sarabash, having a little bit of a tough time. Lurking not having a tough time with these charge dashes, getting them very cleanly. Has not killed the frog and does lose a little bit of height, but he gets all the way to the top, and LusTher takes a death, and that is unfortunately going to send him back and require him to get that ability cell again.
Yeah, one of the things, though, I think with LusTher having PB'd this morning, and the fact also that he's not watching the restream right now, is that I think he's a little bit better prepared for mental recovery despite some of these pretty significant setbacks. At this point, it's going to be pretty difficult for him to catch up to Lurking. Lurking's going to have to make some pretty significant mistakes, but that said, I do expect a very clean second game, regardless of what happens here in the first game from LusTher, just because he is a little bit fresher. He does have that practice, and he does have the confidence of having just PB'd, so... rocket jumps right into the spikes, and he's back at Sorrow Bash again. That is brutal. Maybe everything's wrong. Maybe he doesn't have the mental fortitude for this at the moment.
I mean, this is exactly the type of game where one mistake quickly cascades into 4 to 5. So you really don't want to see things like that happen. You really hope that LusTher is able to get together real quick. It does give Lurking a ton of advantage, some clear room to just make mistakes of his own in Misty and not have to worry about LusTher catching him immediately. And although LusTher is not watching the restream nor his opponent, he has no idea what the state of the race is. Of course, he can probably guess. Lurking is, so Lurking does know how close it was up until now. LusTher missing the rocket jump to break the ceiling as well, so that's a little bit unfortunate. And he misses it a second time. Just he was not holding Feather all the way through that rocket jump, and as a result, the shot did not break the ceiling. He's got one more chance. That one should do it. But now he's short on energy. So
and he doesn't take out the backup energy that's sitting right there either. Well, that'll be interesting to see how he decides to play this out, because he's not going to be able to set up immediately for this ghost door, I don't believe.
Nor his Terror Break, which will possibly throw off his muscle memory as well. Not a situation you really want to be in.
Yeah, and he still doesn't have a save. He's through now, so he's not going to end up going back to Sorrow Bash, because the automatic save whenever you activate a skill tree here, so he's fine, and he is setting up for his Terror Break, but as you mentioned, the muscle memory gets thrown off very, very easily when you have a cascade of issues like that. But now that he's through that, we'll have to keep an eye on him and see, how he plays for the next few segments here. Meanwhile, Lurking, as you mentioned, he is watching the restream. He knows how far he is or isn't at any given point throughout this race, which is now a very significant advantage for him. And he seems to have whatever nerves he may have had at the beginning of this race completely just vacated from his system. He's playing very cleanly. There have been very few things in the order of even minor mistakes that have been occurring for him. I would say probably since Genzo.
And for that matter, he's even got the confidence to make sure to throw down a safety save here and there. He did throw one down earlier before that spike pit and Misty, so a very heads-up play. He knows that this is certainly the kind of place where you can make a big mistake and take a death. But of course, if you are able to vaporize mini bosses as he just did using that bang zoom quick kill method, then that certainly helps. Did burn an energy here, so certainly not having perfectly optimal execution by any stretch, but able to kind of compensate for any mistakes that he is making, and he should be fine as he heads out of Misty towards the grenade tree. Meanwhile, LusTher is unfortunately taking a quick death on the way out of Sorrow, so he's gonna have to redo that trip. But I have a feeling LusTher knows that this race is probably not going to end particularly well for him. He's probably looking forward to the next one already.
Yeah, and to that end, his mental state might already just be there. He's thinking about the things that have gone wrong in this race and what he needs to do to correct it. And multitasking is neurologically impossible to do, so as he's thinking about those things, the watching what's happening on screen just kind of disappears a little bit,
God. Okay, that was terrifying.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Lurking is skipping this cutscene here, which is infinitely long, and is going to pick up his last skill, Light Grenade. So he is all set and ready to finish up this race. as LusTher is continuing to work his way through Misty, giving some X mouse movements for us on screen here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he knows where this is at, roughly.
Yeah, having, again, a few minor movement flubs on the way and being down at 1 HP and no energy, but does get to the climb tree, so he'll be fine. Lurking having some similar problems with this movement on the way out of Grenade, but did get to the Grenade tree on actually very, very good pace. He could be getting a 29 in this race, which, well, LusTher just got for the first time ever this morning, so Lurking, you know, maybe being a little bit rusty, but certainly not letting that stop him from putting in a convincing argument for why he does want to win this match here. And as we teleport back to Swamp, we'll see whether he chooses to do Warm Skip. He did go for 3 health in the beginning, which means he is going to be stuck at 5 maximum. So the swim there, not usually too scary for runners of Lurking's caliber and experience, but you know, things can happen.
Yeah, this is Ori in the Blind Forest, and we have seen final escapes go terribly wrong for extended periods of time. Don't think it'll be enough for LusTher to get himself back in this race, but we'll just have to see how it goes. Some charge dash is very clean. We can dream. It's a very clean charge dash is over, stop cancels and all that good nonsense to get to the most notorious trick of the end game, door warp, which has not switched things in any race ever in a tournament setting.
Not even once.
Not even once. So LusTher has tagged the trigger there for the Gumon Seal area in Misty Woods, which is all you need to do in order to be able to advance and get out. And Lurking now on the left-hand side of your screen is preparing for the final escape.
I feel like there's a sort of wishful thinking with commentators that kind of goes across games. In like Link to the Past, it's, oh man, you know, if this person fell again in like 17 times, then it would totally be an even up race again. But Lurking having no problems with his first try door warp, and does not go for warm skip, sees what the deficit is, and knows that it's more than enough to be able to confidently finish. He could even skip grenade jump if he wanted to, but for runners of his caliber and experience, he probably won't feel it's necessary to skip. So he's gonna just float a little bit above the water to lure the fish into slightly better positions, and then he'll be able to bash safely out of the water and spawn Kuro, so maybe now he will skip that grenade jump. Nope,
oh,
he's going
for it. Yeah, and he gets it.
Beautiful. GG to Lurking. He will be wrapping up with a low 30. Very, very nice time. As LusTher coming into the grenade tree, so we'll be able to wrap up his race as well in just a couple minutes.
That actually, we got a joke about, you know, missing the cutscene, the cutscene, the spawn for Kuro there, and then going for the grenade jump. But to me, that is an indicator of Lurking's building confidence as this race progresses. And he had mentioned to us before the race that he expected LusTher to have you know, some mistakes in order to be able to win confidently, win convincingly. I'm not sure that's the case at this point. For a 30-11 finish in a race setting behind his PB of 28:52, so only a little over a minute behind it, you know, for essentially a D-Rust race for him, pretty impressive and pretty intimidating.
Yeah, that takes you back to that, you know, difference between those PBs, which we always like to talk about, and sometimes you wonder, like, what does that mean? Like, if two players' PBs are different by a minute and a half or whatever, what does that really mean? Because people can make mistakes and stuff. Like, that doesn't mean Lurking's guaranteed to get a minute and a half faster time. But the subtext there is, if Lurking has managed to get a PB that is a minute faster than LusTher, then that means that Lurking has done strats that are enough faster and he's enough more consistent at that he's able to string together the play of the game from start to finish so that he can get that faster time by a minute. That's really what the real meaning of that is. And the result is, in a race situation like this, even with the same amount of mistakes between both players, as LusTher nails first try door warp there, it still goes in the favor of the player with the faster PB because they had to have the superior play to support that faster PB in the first place. And Lurking's really shown basically that he's certainly not lacking in recollection of how to do his strats. He's not lacking in muscle memory to be able to pull off those strats. He did make some mistakes. He did have some, some spooky moments, but he was able to say, well, I've got enough skill to compensate for that pretty much.
Yeah, and just to kind of illustrate that point, the separation in times for these runners in their qualifiers was approximately the same, a difference of about, it was 5:11 for Lurking and 5:36 for LusTher between their best and worst times. And so that just translates into the consistency that both runners have in comparison to sort of their own progression in learning and executing the speed game. So you do expect that to translate into a race setting, that they're going to have some of the same issues that they would have in practice. They would be performing very well in, say, the late game if they have done so previously. So despite LusTher's improved play, I mean, it's fairly recent that he's been sort of shaving off these times. Lurking's been at it for a little bit longer. I think he's got a little bit more experience and more confidence, and it showed throughout the performance of this first match, which he took fairly handily.
Indeed, LusTher finishing up 32:57. Not the time he was probably hoping for, but he's got some opportunity now to cool down a little bit, and we'll be able to come into game two, hopefully with a little bit of a clean slate. Lurking is going to be looking to do the same, of course, and just wrap this race up so that he can get back to Final Fantasy X. But for us, Shafe and I, we are going to step aside for just a few moments. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will have game two of this match between LurkingAssassin and LusTher, so stick around.
Welcome back to Ori and the Blind Forest All Skills Tournament 2019. LusTher versus Lurking Assassin. Lurking taking the early 1-0 lead. And this with a pretty solid performance in the first race. LusTher with some mistakes and has talked to us offline that the confidence kind of has been hit a little bit. But by the same token, I mean, there's nothing saying here that Lurking could have a similar struggle with early game and have his confidence shattered. So this is Ori and the Blind Forest. Absolutely anything can happen. And we'll be getting underway with game number 2 very shortly.
Indeed, and that absolutely anything can happen. You know, we do say that a lot. We do have to always qualify. Like, it's not that likely that somebody is going to like die 8 times in the final escape or anything like that. But what is certainly likely is someone can just flub up one minor thing and take a death. And those big deaths can cost you very significant amounts of time. There are some really bad ones that are the equivalent up to 1.5 minutes of time lost. So there's certainly some opportunity for things to happen as we're getting underway here, but you know, you really don't want to see that, Shafe, to be honest, right? You kind of want to see just a clean game from both runners and then have them both bring their best, and maybe one of them, you know, takes the victory based on overall the total play over the course of the run is just cleaner, but not necessarily any major deaths.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You don't want to see a runner win a race on the sheer basis of another runner having a bad one, and that's what happened in game number 1. We do expect that LusTher is going to have a strong comeback race here, but there's only one way to find out, and that's to see how this race is going to progress. So this time, does Lurking walk past sign? No, he does not. He successfully activates Spirit Flame there on time. And,
I'm so proud.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly the race is over. He got the one thing that he didn't have.
Yeah, that's the biggest time save you can really get, is that 20 frames tops of you know, making sure to press the button at the right time. So from here on out, you know, it's pretty much formality. All right, so we're gonna do some real movement to get to the part of the game that actually matters. Lurking does get softened up by that bramble back there, so that's a little bit scary, even though it's not a huge deal. It's just 1 damage, but it's the type of thing where you're just not used to taking that damage early on. He will probably get a health pickup somewhere along the way here, so that'll make it a little bit safer, and he'll be back at full health. So, yeah, there it is. So now he can resume his normal movement.
And LusTher does get the slightly cleaner pull on that rock, so slight early advantage for him. And we'll now be taking an intentional damage boost off of this line to set up the Ghost Door, as well Lurking. Grabbing the Keystone, buffering the save, dropping it down, hitting the water, boom, Ghost Door. It's like it was never even there. So this is going to be interesting for me. LusTher does go for that save, 4th health, and Lurking once again doesn't. I was sort of wondering whether or not LusTher would feel pressured into... Ooh, takes a hit from the Frankie there. Wondering if he would feel pressured at all into going for broke a little bit more, but it seems like he's just going to be playing his normal tournament play.
Yeah, it's really, really risky. I mean, it's pretty risky to change really any of your strats between races. It's a little bit different from something like a direct one-on-one like sports competition. Because this is a race, you can't just be like, well, I'm just going to do a strat that I've never practiced or learned before. And HP in particular is very, very risky because you have these assumptions that are baked into the way you play based on how much health you have in certain places. And, you know, changing that up suddenly, it's not the kind of thing you can very, very safely do just on the fly like that. So it doesn't surprise me too much to see LusTher not go for that. He is coming in a little bit closer behind Lurking this time on the wall jump tree, so that's pretty nice, actually. In fact, even made up some of that difference from picking up the health cell compared to Lurking here.
Yep, so now we hold right, and we head back over towards dash. Clean execution so far out of the wall jump from both of the runners. Picking up that little bit of XP to get the level up explosion, killing the brambles. That's about a 2-second time save. And had to take a little extra jump there, did Lurking, to get that Trojan rock, but does so successfully. LusTher, meanwhile, clean setup, first try, and that'll save him a couple frames as he's working his way towards Black Burrows.
It is always crazy to compare what saves you the time in the early game versus what saves you time in the late game. This, or in the Blind Forest, is, I think the reason it's such a great speedrun is that it is so different from start to finish. The things that you have to focus on at the very beginning of the game are like, well, did I jump optimally over this slime? Did I have to turn back while I was going over it? Did I accidentally bonk into something? Did I get the health drop or the energy drop at the wrong time? Whereas later in the game, it's like, okay, am I charge dashing fast enough? Am my bash angle is optimal? Am I? Oh no. Oof,
That's a big early game death from LusTher. That's going to cost him around a minute.
Yeah, that's one of the costliest deaths in the run that you can take. Setting him back to the wall jump tree around 440 when he previously had hit the tree at about 320. So. Man, that's not a great start for him for sure, and it's going to put him really behind the 8 ball, as Lurking's going to have a very, very large deficit to be able to work with. He can throw down safety saves willy-nilly. He can almost do any safety strat that he likes at this point. LusTher's going to really need him to have some bad times.
Yeah, that's a real unfortunate death for LusTher to be taking. We do allude to it, and not to harp on it too much, but a lot can still happen to Lurking, but it is unlikely given just his overall performance and experience with the game. So this is, I think, more about LusTher's mental confidence. Can he recover from such a significant death? And you were talking about how it's usually the minor things. Did you make this jump appropriately in the early game? That can be the difference between a 5-minute spirit well versus a 440. That is one of the bigger things, and it is going to mean that LusTher now has to have all those minor, small little details. Does he have to make a second jump before heading through this slow zone on his way out of Blackroot Burrows? Does he get a dash glide? All those little minor things that are going to save him, 0.2 seconds are going to be what he needs to catch up.
Or missing the XP from that slime there, that is not great. That is going to put him, in fact, because normally you get the level up off the second slime in Blackroot Burrows when doing Genocide, that kills the third one and you get his XP as well. But LusTher, as a result of that missed XP, didn't kill either of them. So he is down 22 XP right now, which is a very substantial amount. He needs to find 2 slimes extra to kill somewhere along the way, so that's not going to be particularly great. Lurking, for his part, had a clean Blackroot Burrows, was able to make the second. Oh gosh, LusTher slipping off his platform and nearly taking another death to the laser, but just going through it, and is going to miss his platform cycle as well here. So, oof.
Yeah. In the meantime, Lurking actually had a pretty close call himself as he was heading up to hit the lever switch at the top here, which brings up this column that you put the orb in. Normally, you drop the orb on one preceding platform to get a pretty, relatively tight window to be able to just jump before the laser zooms across and has an opportunity to kill you. He had actually recognized that he was a little bit slow on his movement, so he was just jumping on that vertical light beam for a few seconds just for safety, so that he didn't take an extra death that actually would have put this race pretty close. So heads up awareness from Lurking, just to know that that little small detail would have cost him pretty substantially, and was willing to take 1 or 2 seconds in order to save a minute, basically, as he is now starting his Frankie walk on the left hand side of your screen. This is the sequence breaking to Grotto. Just in the event that you haven't watched a lot of this tournament so far, this is a 4 energy door that he's coming up to. He currently has 2 energy, which you can't see because he has the UI turned off. So he's going to time a level up here in order to be able to regenerate his energy and thus get 4 to put into the door and sequence break his way into Grotto.
Good execution on that trick for him. Doing the magnetless version, magnet being that ability that is kind of ubiquitous, but Lurking won't be taking it for a very long time. It causes those XP drops to kind of hoover into you. It does have a little bit of a flub getting on top of this platform up here. Again, little things like this are not really going to be sufficient for LusTher, and for Lurking's perspective, if he has these mistakes, he's just going to be like, this is fine. I have so much room here. It's totally okay as long as I don't make major mistakes. And that's exactly what you described, where making those small adjustments, as long as you don't die, nothing else matters, basically. Even missing this grotto cycle, which Lurking just did, does not matter. Again, as long as he doesn't die, as long as he doesn't get sent back for like a minute and a half or anything like that. LusTher is working on his XP. I'm not sure if he got to the number that he needed. I assume he did because he's going with the Frankie walk.
Yeah,
so
he's in target range now. He took an extra slime off to the left of the spirit wall, so he should be okay here. But yeah, it's going to be like, barring any significant errors on Lurking's end, it's going to have to be a lot of those minor mistakes. And then LusTher's going to have to not have any minor mistakes at this point to start to slowly close that gap. It looks as though LusTher has regained some confidence here. He has, since that death that sent him back to wall jump, he has been moving fairly well. That's a 948 double jump for Lurking on the left-hand side. Blind movement, getting out very cleanly, dropping the safety save, as you alluded to. He knows where he's at, so he can throw those down pretty much whenever he wants. And he is doing so to make sure that when he comes up on things like this trick here, the grotto skip, if he somehow manages to miss it and the beam gets out of position and making it more difficult for him, which is not going to be a concern, even going for Baguette. Nice job from Lurking.
Yeah, actually opting out of it at the last instant, and also opting out of his cutscene skip here. So we're gonna have some rocks. Again, you know, it's still pretty much whatever, right? It's like, look, a 5-second time loss there does not matter. You've got still on the order of a minute lead, but just don't die going up this rock fall. Just avoid taking any deaths to this thing. He's already taken 2 damage, but he should be good the rest of the way. So he's already at the top, and yeah, he's gonna dash across and skip this cutscene, so now the rocks will be falling forever in that section there. And oh, LusTher dropping his save slightly too far from the double jump tree, so he's not going to be able to make use of it. Could have done a save anywhere to be able to still do it, but he opted out of it and just going to leave the save and move on with his life.
Ooh, and he dashes into that slime as well, which when you dash, it resets your invulnerability frame, so you actually ended up taking 2 damage off of that slime, so... it was about a 107-second time difference, not 107 seconds, a minute 7 between the runners as of double jump, but you know, missing that blind movement did cost LusTher a little bit more time as well. Lurking for his part, left side, dashing through the grotto laser area, and is going to be working up his way towards the Ginzo tree. A little bit of a tight double jump there for newer runners anyway, for somebody of Lurking's experience, very easy. And another spaghetti from LusTher, unfortunately.
Yeah, that one's rough. He was going for a baguette jump and just bonked and hit the spikes instead. And turns out all that softening up he took earlier, including one very freak damage that I'm not sure I've ever seen anyone take, just dashing into the little spike crusher near that keystone after the keystone door, and that just gave him the 1 extra damage needed to make that miss fatal. So now he's through to the rock fall. He won't have rocks, at least. Small comfort for him at this point. But Lurking, meanwhile, getting to the Ginzo tree entrance, and we'll see if we're gonna... Yeah, we're getting some spark flame from Lurking.
Wants to go for it again and get that 3 cycles. That's a 12:37 approximately for Lurking. Does a little extra reload there.
I want to be clear here, Shafe. The spark flame thing, it overall loses time.
Yeah,
a decent amount. It's like 5 seconds.
It's more for fun, I think, than it is for anything else. But it does. The mini boss is probably the only major point of RNG in the game, and that just kind of eliminates it. And it's sort of like a heck you to that mini boss.
That is very true. We're digging deeper into the Ginzo tree, which is a tree, so that's not really a great choice of analogy, but it's fine. We're going to keep advancing. LusTher taking the death right after placing his save, so certainly among the least bad deaths he could have taken there. And he'll be getting his ability cell, which he'll use for a sane purpose, Terra Break. But yeah, I mean, the deficit here is pretty much going to stay exactly where it is. I guess the things you want to start looking out for when you have a race like this, and it's like, yeah, probably not going to go in LusTher's favor from this point on, is really like you just want to see LusTher play as well as he can. You want to see him be able to recover from kind of the state that he's in right now. Unfortunately, you see kind of taking another hit there on those spinning spike crushers, but he knows his HP is good enough to survive. And then flubbing that cutscene skip too, unfortunately, so he's going to have to watch this. Lurking, meanwhile, you kind of want to see him play as well as you can as well, but he is going to be coming into the bash tree at like on the order of like 14:35, and I mean that's a fine time for him. It's probably not up to his standards, but it's like, you know, in a no reset situation, it's pretty okay.
Yeah, and in a tournament setting as well, it's I think a lot of racers just have the mentality of, if I win by 2 seconds, that is completely acceptable. It doesn't matter if it's 2 seconds or 2 minutes. So he's pretty much breezing through this. I think at this point, you've seen LusTher's confidence effectively shattered. Not to mince any words about it or anything. I don't expect anything significant from Lurking that's going to give LusTher an opportunity to get back into this. And based on just the movement and some of these small mistakes, these extra deaths that LusTher's taking, I don't think he has what it takes today. And, you know, we talked about how he PB'd earlier. That is extremely draining when you go on your best time and then to have a race immediately after that, and then never mind to have that first race like go completely sideways on you. I can't imagine what's going through his head right now. It's got to be incredibly difficult for him, and I feel for him for sure.
Yeah, that's pretty much the point I was going to make as well, is that, you know, just earlier today, getting that PB, and, you know, that's certainly, like, it raises your confidence level in one way, like, a lot, but it also just, like, really eats up, like, that, you know, that emotional energy that you have. And so you have to go into a race like this right after that, and it's like, how do you come off that high? And I mean, LusTher, like, he got that, I think it was around like 7 hours ago. So how do you come off that high, and then 7 hours later, where your adrenaline might still be pumping, to get your first sub 30 time in this game, which is such an incredibly difficult milestone to achieve. I can speak from experience on that one. To then go and be like, okay, now I need to also do this race series against an incredibly tough opponent that I already thought was going to have a very good chance of kicking my butt and just, you know, making mincemeat of me, basically. And you've got to be able to get up for it again, and that's just absurdly difficult. So to see this kind of result from LusTher, it's certainly among the results that, you know, we might have been able to expect might have happened. It's just kind of the most unfortunate one.
Yeah, and the way that it's happening exactly is what's kind of making this, you know, difficult from a viewer perspective to watch. We hope that he has a clean race from here on out, that Sorrow Bash doesn't give him any difficulty. But yeah, it's so incredibly difficult to, like, let's say, for example, you are driving for 8 hours, right? And then you get a 2-hour nap, and then you have to hit the road for another 8 hours. Like, there's no way that even 1 hour into your second drive, you are not having issues. And I think that's kind of what LusTher's going through right now, is he's had that adrenaline dump. His mind isn't where it would normally be in a race setting, and he's just struggling with it. And it's something that is unfortunately just very real from having put in all that time and putting all that practice in. Overtraining can definitely be a real thing when you're going into a competitive environment.
So as Lurking is coming into the Stomp Tree here, he did manage to pull off second try Swamp Entry, unfortunately dunking his frog into the water and just having a little bit of an issue there, but did manage to recover, and he had opted to skipping the laser cutscene there, so he's got lasers, but was able to put a slightly closer safety save to make that situation a little bit less bad for him. So LusTher will be coming up. You know, that gap is narrowing a little bit, but also, you know, kind of as Lurking's making some minor mistakes, so too is LusTher. So it stayed mostly kind of even. Lurking even throwing in an extra double bash there on Ringo to just make sure that it's even less likely he makes any mistake there. So something nearly like a high five here, as the runners are kind of going through the same general vicinity at the same time. You're seeing some very unusual high fives that you wouldn't necessarily normally expect. First try Kuro cutscene skip for Lurking this time. It does not spot the angry bird. It does just jump into the water. I don't know what was up with that. He just went straight in.
Wanted to take a bath. He wanted to make sure that Ori was clean heading up into this spider sack area. You know, even though the water is
pretty
not clean.
but so do those spikes. Those look very, very clean.
And that's exactly why he placed a save right there, by the way. Because you can get infinity'd by this pretty easy.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, well, he's through now. That does give LusTher a bit of catch up there, but he's still pretty significantly behind. And now Lurking is heading his way over towards Charge Flame. He even stops to give a little bit of a hello to Mr. Big Spiny person.
Very nice
first swamp entry from LusTher, by the way.
We're both like, oh my god, the truck said something. Let's jump on him.
Thanks, by the way, truck. We have Richard and Oshi in the truck helping us out.
We're professional broadcasters.
Yes, we work very hard at this.
All right, Spirit Tree cutscene skip. Yeah, go Lurking. Coming in at just about 20 minutes, so not like a super amazing time for Lurking, but you know, he has the stream open, so he's looking and just seeing, I'm ahead of LusTher. That's really all that matters. Let's just get out of here alive, get back to Mega Man Battle Network 6, get back to Final Fantasy X, maybe get that coveted sub 9 in that run, which I don't even know if it's possible, but you know, who cares? It probably is.
It's not Ori, so that's all that matters at this point. So LusTher coming up on his revisit to Ringo. No shenanigans there. Gets his ability cell, and he's going to be heading out his way through to the Crow cutscene skip. We'll see if he gets this. That is a death from Lurking, to say the least. That does tighten the gap, actually, reasonably significantly.
Okay, I guess we can start talking about the concept that actually it turns out, you know, all those things we were saying, oh, well, it's not going to be enough to let LusTher back in, but it turns out if you make enough mistakes, you can actually let your opponent back into the race, and like another death like that from Lurking would set this to be about a 30-second deficit for LusTher, which suddenly is within striking distance.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I alluded to that earlier, that it's a combination of things, is the big things and the small things that end up adding to time saves or time losses in Ori, and very often it is the small things. Sometimes it is the big ones, and we'll see if this is a big one. LusTher did miss his fast Dauntless on in the first race. Lurking here looks to have his setup to get the ability cell in time, and he does, so no significant time loss for him there, as LusTher hits his Spirit Well at Grove at approximately 21:53-ish, so that's about a minute and a half or so behind Lurking.
Yeah, the length of this valley segment here between the two of them, as LusTher will now be working on some of these movements here. This valley segment is very dangerous. There's a lot of chance for bad things to happen, as you did see to Lurking. But now Lurking's got feathers, so we're going to go into the last mad dash through the end of the game. This feather to end section is often a benchmark that people use, because once you learn charge dash, the movement of the run just like completely and utterly changes. That is a beautiful backup by Lurking to accidentally dashing away from the bird and able to save himself from what would have been a very, very unfortunate situation. But this segment of the game, these last 9 minutes, give or take, for runners of this caliber, it actually doesn't vary that much in terms of total length between the most top runners and someone like LusTher. And so this is the kind of place where maybe LusTher can catch up if anything bad befalls Lurking, but it is going to take a lot. LusTher working on his fast novelist, does get the cell, does get the shot, and Lurking has no problem with crazy juggle, and he has well, minor problems, but
yeah, minor problem. But he managed, when he stopped down there, he didn't like immediately, like when he stopped down too far, he didn't immediately like charge dash. He took a moment to be like, okay, I missed this. I'm gonna just take a breath, and then he goes for it again without damaging the frog an extra time. So he was able to continue crazy juggle and get that successfully, as he now watches from behind his ability tree the Sunstone appear, and we'll be proceeding to skip his cutscene. LusTher, meanwhile, has had that sad stylus, as we like to call it, Happened to him twice coming out of Fast Stompless.
Oof.
Did get it there, but now more problems with Sorrow Bash.
It's a difficult trick. There's a lot of bird manipulation involved, varying numbers of birds depending on your skill level and desire of which kind of strat you're going to do. In this case, it's just one that he's trying to use here, but there is a lot of potential for him to kind of just be in an inconvenient position. He was not there. He was in a good position. LusTher was able to manipulate him accordingly and get into Sorrow. Let's hope that, yeah, there he's able to hold the feather just enough to be able to get that shot to hit the ceiling, and then he is... Okay, now he looks like he's really clicking. He throws down that save instantly, takes the immediate death to reset his save cooldown, and he's on his way to charge jump. So LusTher's got the blood pumping now, and you can kind of feel that his movements are getting cleaner and snappier, and he's ready to go here.
Yeah, it looks like he's got some of the adrenaline back. It took him a while, unfortunately, probably too long. We'll see how this race ends up progressing, obviously, but he, to your point, he definitely seems to have recovered some of that confidence. He missed Sorrow Bash on the first attempt. No hesitation, goes to get it, and gets it pretty cleanly on his second try instead of, you know, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, kind of, you know, the continuous struggle that he had with it in the first race. He just jumped right back into it and was able to get it successfully. As you say, his movement is appearing to be a lot more confident. Not enough to probably advance him at this point, but it's good to see from a viewer's perspective that he has recovered from that mentally, and he's continuing to perform to the caliber that we know that he can.
Yeah, for that matter, Lurking doing the same thing as, you know, he had that death back in Valley, but since then, he has been playing pretty much to his skill level, and that's very, very high, demonstrating that throughout the Star Pass and throughout the first half of Misty there. Of course, Crazy Juggle, you know, costing him just a little bit of time, but really, as long as you do the trick, it's pretty okay in a race setting, whether or not it's a little bit finicky. But now you see these movements for him